This episode is brought to you by Netflix. So Netflix is basically Santa this year. 2 NFL games on Christmas Day, streaming live. At 1 p.m. Eastern, it's Cowboys, Commanders. Then at 4:30, you've got Lions, Vikings. Midwest football, playoff stakes, and probably some snow. Watching holiday football is a tradition the whole family can enjoy. Open some gifts, grab some food, settle in, and watch NFL Live on Netflix this Christmas Day.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
I am Daniel Keys.
And this is Mick, the Doctor of Digital.
And welcome to Music 101. Music 101 is created to empower music itself, and legendary icon in the music industry. Another week, another great episode. Why 70s soft rock was more rebellious than punk.
Wow, that sounds very stimulating. The sound that still moves us, and why this emotional honesty was the real revolution. You know, the music that started emerging wasn't giving up, it was looking inward. The welcome volume was turned down, both literally and metaphorically. The towering stacks of Marshall amplifiers that had defined the sound of 1969 were replaced by the warm, intimate sound of the acoustic guitar. Soft rock became a sanctuary, an auditory safe home. Instead of the sonic bombast, anger, and psychedelia of the previous year, 1970 brought acoustic guitars, soft vocal harmonies, delicate piano chords, and lyrics that talked about personal feeling, loss, yearning, hope, and domesticity. Instead of fighting political battles, this was the moment the singer-songwriter truly came into their own, moving from the folk revival niche into the absolute cultural mainstream, armed with little more than a guitar and a journal full of heartache.
Indeed, and thank you so much for legacy to the world. And now, Mr. Mick, what made 1970 so musically and emotionally unique?
Well, the summer and the year of 1970 arrived with such uncertainty, hanging heavy in the air. The Woodstock's muddy fields were barely dry. The Vietnam War pressed on despite massive protests, and America was suspended between the radical optimism of the late 1960s and an as unwritten yet next chapter. That moment felt like a standing on the shoreline between two emotional eras, the roar of revolution fading behind us and the hum of reflection rising ahead. It was a societal exhale, a collective moment of taking stock after nearly a decade of relentless culture-shifting velocity. The sheer psychic energy expended on the civil rights movement, the assassinations of leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy, the moon landing, and the nonstop musical and stylistic rebellion of the counterculture had simply run its course. People were, quite simply, exhausted by politics, by passion, by change itself. To understand this shift, you have to place yourself in the daily life of an American teenager. At Mayfair High, my friends Don, Rod, and I called ourselves the Three Musketeers. We spent hours, literally hundreds of hours, debating news headlines. The draft lottery system was looming threat. Kent State shootings had just happened in May, and the entire political landscape felt volatile and dangerous. Every conversation was edged with the question of the future, wondering if the war would reach our zip code. But afterward, as the sun began to set, we always turned back to the radio. Songs provided an empathetic soundtrack for a generation trying to navigate an unscripted future. In conclusion, that year, and especially the summer of 1970, was the moment American culture wrapped volume and swapped it for vulnerability.
Mr. Mick, why does Cat Stevens' Wild World still resonate so deeply?
Because it captures the universal poignant heartbreak of letting go. Released in September 1970 as a single from the album Tea for the Tillerman, Wild World became a musical letter to anyone leaving someone, and something, a lover, a hometown, or an innocence. It's a moment of profound, painful transition set to melody. The song is simultaneously both a cautionary warning and a heartfelt blessing. Two emotions rarely balance so perfectly within a 3-minute pop song. It speaks to the fear for another's journey, the recognition of your own inability to stop them, and the ultimate selfless act of wishing them well anyway. When Cat Stevens sings that it's a wild world, we don't hear just anxiety for the departing person. We hear an extraordinary amount of empathy for the challenges ahead. The structure of the tune perfectly mirrors the emotional lift of acceptance. It hurts to love you and lose you, but I wish you well. I remember listening to this track and internalizing the larger uncertainties. Where would I end up if the draft came? Would the ideals of my youth still feel safe and relevant in adulthood? Would I ever find a love that felt both profound and enduring? In conclusion, Wild World remains timeless because it teaches that the deepest, most mature kind of love is the one that can let go without bitterness.
Wild World for sure. What did Lonely Days add the musical conversation of the 1970s, Mr. Mac?
Lonely Days is a fascinating track. It's pure musical alchemy, the brilliant transformation of crippling sorrow into an oddly uplifting, cathartic sound. By 1970, the Bee Gees, the brothers Gibb, had already survived a near decade of the music business, enduring both meteoric fame and near implosion due to intra-band tension. The song, released in October 1970, marked their official creative reunion and a clear signal that they were determined to channel their personal and professional vulnerability into their craft. This was, in essence, their healing song, and it sounded like reconciliation made audible. The core theme is an aching loneliness, yet the sound is full of harmonic warmth, creating a profound, optimistic paradox. The ironic and iconic opening piano riff, gentle yet insistent and slightly mournful, sets the emotional scene immediately before a single word is sung. It's a beautiful, melancholic figure that hooks the listener. Then came the harmonies, tighter and more intricate than ever, fusing personal grief with profound grace. It's impossible not to hear the powerful echoes of the Beatles in this period, especially the layered orchestral arrangements and sophisticated pop structures that dominated their Abbey Road influence. But Lonely Days has its albatross. It's Beatlesque, but in 1970, we were just losing the Beatles as they were breaking up. When Barry sang the central plea, "Where would I be without my woman?" it wasn't a showy declaration. It was an honest, human, trembling truth of dependence and deep longing. For us kids in Southern California, dreaming about love and connection beyond the confines of high school, that song mirrored the vague, inchoate loneliness we didn't yet know how to name or articulate. My bad days and breakups were coming. I just didn't know it yet. In conclusion, Lonely Days took the emotional rawness of the singer-songwriter movement and fused it with the melodic sophistication of late-period rock.
Loneliness for sure. And why did Van Morrison change the texture of soft rock with Into Domestic?
Well, Van Morrison doesn't merely sing a song. He summons a feeling, a place, a kind of primal spiritual yearning. Into the Mystic, from his masterpiece album Moondance, felt less like listening to a record and more like experiencing a musical meditation in real time. It took soft rock's burgeoning introspection and gave it a cosmic, almost ethereal dimension, merging Irish folk simplicity with the profound depth of American soulful transcendence. It's a song about the process of spiritual seeking wrapped in the imagery of a sea voyage. Ships, fog, sea winds, and the sound of a foghorn. Morrison uses these to describe the journey of the soul, a spiritual return to the self or to a divine source, rather than a literal physical travel. His voice, in this period, carries the weight of centuries of Celtic prayer, the raw expression of the blues, and the deep brassy yearning of R&B. Even the iconic muted foghorns placed subtly into the mix aren't merely sound effects. They are sonic signposts, ancient, melancholic calls to spiritual awakening and navigation. The ambiguity of the lyrics. Is he singing about a sexual union, a return home, or a spiritual merging? Is its very strength allowing for boundless personal interpretation? People played this song not just in quiet rooms, but in cars, on long searching drives towards something beautiful and indefinable. It is ultimately about the feeling of returning home, but recognizing that home is not a physical destination on a map, but an internal, centered state of being. It remains one of the few popular tracks that can make the quiet act of listening feel sacred, lifting the everyday act of driving or walking into a moment of spiritual significance. In conclusion, Into the Mystic lifted soft rock into true spiritual territory, demonstrating that the divine can whisper through everyday song, sound, and that the search for meaning is best undertaken with a warm, soulful rhythm guiding the way.
Mr. Mick, the mood blues seem to capture the decade's confusion with their progressive sound. What was Question really asking?
Question was that rare pop record that dared to think philosophically on a grand scale, forcing the political and the personal into a 3-minute high-energy fusion. Justin Hayward's lyrics didn't just touch upon the era's raw bewilderment, they articulated it with furious urgency. With the Vietnam War raging, the counterculture splintering, and trust in government eroded, people were desperately seeking for meaning amid the deafening noise of the world. Hayward articulated that collective confusion, but instead of succumbing to despair, he turned the act of questioning itself into a symphonic, dynamic reflection. The song doesn't seek an answer, it celebrates the inquiry. The song's dynamic structure is key. That opening acoustic introduction, a burst of incredibly ferocious, urgent strumming, feels almost like a confrontation, a demand for attention. The music literally demands dialogue. The arrangement then masterfully opens into orchestral wideness, a technique the Moody Blues pioneered, as if the universe itself pauses to listen to the question being asked. This rapid shift from an urgent, almost folk rock acoustic guitar to the grand orchestrated mellotron-fueled chorus creates a sense of epic scale. The Moody Blues were an unusual force in pop music, poetic, literate, and orchestrally fearless. The dramatic transition from the short, urgent verses, "Why do we never know where we're going? Is there a reason for us being here?" to the lush, expansive choruses reminds us that every inquiry, no matter how daunting, holds the potential for revelation. It was a fusion of hard rock energy and symphonic contemplation. To listeners, then, struggling to reconcile their personal dreams with the global reality, it unified the personal scale. Who am I? What am I supposed to do? With the planetary scale, what are we doing? Can we learn to live together? That incredible balance between intimate doubt and global scale gave the song its enduring power and cultural weight in the turbulent early 1970s. In conclusion, Question made wonder a virtue, transforming existential anxiety into a powerful symphonic statement.
Symphonic statement for sure. So, Mr. Mick, after all, big essential questions, our house feels like exhaling. Why did the song matter so much?
Our house with the sound of valuing stillness and celebrating the quiet victory of domesticity. Graham Nash wrote it after moving in with the legendary singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell in her house in Laurel Canyon, Los Angeles. It was a domestic moment so intimate. They had just bought some inexpensive antique vases, and he was struck by the simple beauty of their shared mundane existence that it transcended ordinary romance. While other songs of the era shouted defiance, this one whispered contentment, portraying domestic peace as a profoundly radical, almost subversive act. It chose tranquility as a political statement in itself. Every detail in the lyric feels tangible and deeply personal. The morning light streaming through the windows, the arrangement of coffee mugs, and the two cats dozing serenely by the fireplace. In 1970, when everything in the public sphere, the news, the politics, the war, was chaotic, overwhelming, and often violent, the idea of claiming an internal shared calm was a truly countercultural choice. The house became a protective bubble against the world's madness. CSNY embodied their generation's great paradox. They were powerful, outspoken political activists and cultural figures, yet they created this indelible piece of music about finding a private haven. They reminded their millions of listeners that true revolution could mean building a sanctuary just as much as it meant dismantling a corrupt system. They argued that the personal was not just political, but also a source of enduring quiet strength. When I first heard it, I wasn't just hearing a love song. I was imagining that what adulthood might someday look like, not as a burden, but as a series of simple, quiet mornings, a life built around simplicity, and a powerful, enduring love without spectacle. The song reminds us that people of every age crave peace when the world outside becomes too loud. In conclusion, our house declared that peace begins not with massive public demonstrations or slogans, but with the shared silence and intentional kindness between two people who choose to build a simple life together.
Mr. Mac, the Carpenters brought a new kind of polish to soft rock. What made their approach distinctive?
Karen and Richard Carpenter made musical perfection sound personable. They took the emotional core of the soft rock movement and elevated its craftsmanship to a new level of pop sophistication while keeping the final product full of genuine heart. They Long to Be Close to You, their massive breakthrough single of 1970, captured that unique, almost contradictory combination: technical mastery and pristine arrangement fused with genuine emotional sincerity. They turned the imperfections of life into a perfectly rendered pop song. The song's foundation, a Burt Bacharach Hal David composition, was already exquisitely sophisticated, but the Carpenters transformed it into something celestial and transcendent. The centerpiece was Karen's voice. It emerged effortlessly, neither over-embellished nor defensively withheld. Her perfect pitch and impeccable phrasing made cosmic imagery, the stars, the birds, the dreams, feel tangible and intimate. She wasn't singing just to the listener. She was singing for the listener, a shared secret. For me and my friends, the Carpenters' success had a local intimacy. Downey, where they were from, was just down the road from where I lived in Lakewood, and they performed early in their career at nearby Cal State Long Beach. Locals could make good without being in LA or New York City, indeed, Cleveland, or even Long Beach or Downey rocks. Their massive commercial success proved definitively that refinement and immaculate production needn't mean emotional sterility. The Carpenters' influence is colossal, shaping not only contemporaries, but also the future of sophisticated, heartbreak-tinged ballads. You hear their echo everywhere, from Norah Jones to Adele. They prove that gentleness, when executed with precision, is a timeless and enduring force. In conclusion, Close to You transformed innocence into elegance, demonstrating that sincerity itself, when perfectly framed, can become the ultimate form of musical sophistication, delivering a universal truth with unmatched polish.
Timeless indeed. So, Mr. Meg, Chicago had the unique blend of brass and beauty. How does Color of My World fit into the music's evolution in 1970?
Color My World was Chicago, the hard-driving jazz rock powerhouse, stripped down into its romantic, quiet soul. Their usual signature sound, bold, ambitious brass anthems, gave way to an exquisite, restrained interplay of quiet piano and flute. It was a conscious choice to express profound intimacy through brilliant musical understatement. The piece lasts barely 2.5 minutes, yet it feels endless in its emotional echo, a perfect jewel of a ballad tucked unexpectedly into their second album, Chicago. At Mayfair High, our own nascent jazz rock band tried desperately to copy Chicago's finesse. We could mimic their notes and their syncopation, but we could never replicate their nuance. Don on saxophone and Rod on trumpet did their best, though. Color My World taught us a powerful lesson. It wasn't just technical musicianship, it was feeling, that delicate restraint and emotional intelligence that separates the competent amateurs from the true artists. It required a control that went beyond mere proficiency. The song's slow, lilting triple meter gives it an aura of a tender waltz, romantic, nostalgic, and entirely timeless. Each chord progression unfolds with the gentle inevitability of a watercolor merging shades of affection. Terry Katz's vocal delivery before his tragic death is almost impossibly tender and restrained, delivered with a warmth gentle enough to suspend time. It's a testament to the power of a voice that chooses to whisper rather than shout. In conclusion, Color My World whispered what many other songs shouted, that the emotional transformation brought about by love doesn't require fanfare, only the profound, authentic expression of a grateful heart.
You've called this one of the greatest recordings ever made. Why does it move people so universally?
Because compassion never goes out of style. Bridge Over Troubled Water transcended genre, generation, and even the complicated history of the duo who recorded it. It is not fundamentally a love song, it is a humanity song. Art Garfunkel's angelic crystalline vocal transforms Paul Simon's words into a kind of universal prayer, flowing from the gentle reassurance of the opening verses into a final soaring explosion of empathy and promise. The structure of the song alone is a piece of sheer musical genius, a quiet, reflective piano entrance built around a stunning chord progression, followed by an inevitable, powerful orchestral rise. Simon masterfully layered in gospel overtones and rhythmic language. The song is deeply influenced by the spiritual tradition, but reimagined it as a purely universal empathy rather than a source of religious comfort alone. The song promises aid, regardless of your belief system or your struggle. It is a vow of human commitment. When Garfunkel reaches the final explosive lines, particularly the stunning final note on the word shine, you feel a physical, emotional lift. You are lifted not by faith alone, but by the overwhelming shared power of human commitment. The incredible recording quality captures every nuance. People listened and wept universally, not out of despair, but out of pure, deep relief. It is the sound of being told with absolute certainty, you are not alone, and I am here for you. And for once, believing it with your entire soul. The song's power helped to mitigate the sadness of the duo's imminent and final breakup, becoming their bittersweet farewell. I vividly remember being 17 and working my first job at a drive-in dairy. It was hot, dusty, and mundane work. I recall hearing this song drift over the tinny, cheap speakers bolted to the roof of the drive-in canopy at sunset. For the 3 minutes the song lasted, even the world of mundane tasks and minimum wage felt illuminated, cleansed of its daily grind. That is the true, lasting reach of great art, turning an ordinary, forgettable moment cosmic and sacred. In conclusion, Bridge Over Troubled Water remains enduring proof that music's greatest and most profound power is empathy articulated through perfect melody, offering solace and strength whenever the world feels overwhelming.
Indeed, one of a kind music. James Taylor brought a different, deeply personal voice to the era. What made Fire and Rain so timeless, Mr. Meg?
Few songs in the history of popular music combine such profound vulnerability and quiet, lasting resilience so completely. Fire and Rain is a raw piece of autobiography transformed in the alchemy of art into pure universality. Taylor wrote not as a performer reaching outward to an audience, but as a man processing inward, grappling with immense personal pain. Yet somehow, millions of listeners across the world could instantly use and see their own despair, deepest, most private reflections in those honest, sparse words. Crucially, the melancholy wasn't fabricated for pop appeal. His grief was profoundly real. The song openly addressed major losses in his young life: the death of a friend by suicide, Suzanne, struggles with mental health, and the challenging realities of drug addiction and recovery. The title became a perfect, enduring metaphor for life's contradictions: destruction and renewal, the pain of memory, and the necessity of healing. The 3 verses deal with 3 distinct themes: grief, fame's betrayal, and recovery, each a snapshot of the young artist's tumultuous journey. In that era of massive, overwhelming concerns and ideological noise, Taylor often sat quietly and played for his neighbors, one of whom I knew, Mrs. Hudson. She didn't know him as a star, but just that guy down the street who played guitar. In conclusion, Fire and Rain taught generations that profound honesty itself is the truest artistry, and that simply surviving, processing and continuing onward is a melody profoundly worth singing.
Profoundly, profoundly for sure. And Mr. Mick, then came a new voice from across the Atlantic. Sir Elton John, how did a young song break through the noise of 1970?
Your song was a glorious sound of innocence rediscovered, a kind of beautiful, hopeful palate cleanser for a jaded generation. The magical partnership between Elton John, the composer and performer, and Bernie Taupin, the lyricist, reintroduced romance without irony and sincerity without a hint of spectacle. In a decade that was increasingly jaded and prized rebellion and cynicism, they reminded everyone that a simple, honest expression of affection could still found profoundly revolutionary and refreshing. Taubin's lyrics, direct, earnest, and intentionally full of charmingly awkward self-depreciation, captured the essence of ordinary devotion. The famous opening line, "It's a little bit funny, this feeling inside," instantly disarmed the listener with its humility. Elton's perfect warm piano accompaniment made those words glow with a comforting, familiar warmth. The song's emotional architecture, progressing from the reflective, hesitant verses to that lifted, magnificent chorus, builds exactly as falling in love feels. Hesitant at the start, then overwhelmingly certain by the end. The use of a small string arrangement, rather than a full orchestra, gives the song a tasteful intimacy. That purity and sincerity established not only Elton John's incredible multi-decade career, but also a renewed faith that mainstream pop music could still sell deeply human, sincere stories. Across America, the song became shorthand for genuine emotional expression. Everyone wanted a Your Song moment, a honest, slightly clumsy, and beautiful offering of the heart, without pretense or artifice. It proved that the most powerful musical statements can be the most tender ones. In conclusion, Your Song became the soft rock template for genuine authenticity and unadulterated, unpretentious joy, opening a new chapter of emotional honesty in mainstream music that celebrated the beauty of simple human connection.
Finally, Brad's Make It With You feels like a gentle, optimistic heart of this era sound. Why end our musical survey here, Mr. Mick?
Because this song perfectly distills every single theme that we've explored across this episode: connection, optimism, the profound power of calm, and the beauty of simplicity. David Gates, the primary songwriter for Bread, composed one of those melodies that feels almost innate, as though humanity had been humming it quietly to itself for centuries. Make It With You, their 1970 smash hit, doesn't try to coax or seduce. It gently invites a listener into a partnership. Its powerful intimacy lies entirely in its tone, not in any grand, sweeping declaration. It reminds me of those quiet, warm summer nights at Mayfair High, the small, unconfessed crushes we carried, the moments that never turned into something more than a shared look or a silent feeling. Even that time when Connie parked her Mustang, taking me home and I had my first kiss. Yet this song carried those delicate, fragile feelings like gentle, valuable keepsakes. It's romance without urgency or possessiveness, portraying mature love as an act of willing, shared patience and mutual construction. Bread's immense success perfectly bridged the gap between the introspective, lyrical depth of the folk scene and the pristine, melodic sophistication of pop radio. The genre they embodied would soon dominate the radio dial for a decade, offering a gentle, more psychologically nuanced voice during America's uncertain transition out of the 60s. Make It With You was, in essence, that entire genre's steady, hopeful heartbeat. It made the domestic, long-term vision of a life together sound like the most exciting adventure of all. In conclusion, the song endures because it speaks softly but universally. It defines love as a partnership, not a possession, and frames emotional calm as a profound form of courage, not a retreat.
Why do these songs, Mr. Mick, and this entire soft rock movement still matter more than 50 years later?
Because they were the generation that showed us that the enduring quiet power of conviction through gentleness. Soft rock was, fundamentally, emotional diplomacy during a period of intense cultural chaos. It mediated successfully between the utopian, often aggressive ideals of the 60s and the difficult, uncertain realism of the 70s. These artists collectively refused to indulge the extremes of cynicism or endless protest. Instead, they built bridges with melody, intimacy, and shared vulnerability rather than a political manifesto. They permitted people to process internally. The movement's influence is utterly colossal and often underestimated. Soft rock influenced everything that followed: the entire singer-songwriter movement, the birth of adult contemporary AC radio, the sound of the 80s power ballad, and even the emotional landscape of much of modern indie and acoustic pop. It made vulnerability fashionable again, challenging the notion that rock music had to be loud, fast, or angry to be meaningful. It reminded audiences, especially men who had been raised on the machismo of hard rock, that gentleness didn't just fail to contradict strength, it actually deepened it, giving it weight and staying power. They defined how music could offer authentic, non-apologetic comfort. Soft rock doesn't have to beg for your attention with volume or aggression. It earns it every time through profound emotional resonance and craft. And in that way, the quiet, revolutionary soundtrack of the 1970s still plays on whenever we need permission to stop, listen to our own hearts, and simply feel. In conclusion, these incredible melodies from 1970 and the soft rock era remind us that gentleness itself is a powerfully revolutionary act, one that continues to heal and strengthen us every time we press play.
Indeed, Mr. Mick, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Yes, people, while punk often more age defiance on rips, leaves, 70s soft rock rebelled in a softer but more radical way by challenging cultural expectation of masculinity, politics, and art through vulnerability. Yes, so Mr. Mike, would you like to plug in something?
Sure, I appreciate it. Write the book, grow the business. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Mick, the Doctor of Digital Smith, PhD. Also listen to the Doctor of Digital podcast. Pick up a couple volumes I have on Amazon. That's Burning America and On Track, Ian Hunter.
Yes, people, I support Mr. Mike, the Doctor Digital, and please do listen to our baby podcast, Mental Health 101. Mental Health 101 is created to empower mental health awareness. So, Mr. Mike, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you as well. Until next time, Deus Volt.
More people, see you soon.